I think we will start seeing more brands aim at this Daytona price of a chronograph. What they see is that people can't get enough of a 15 grand chronograph. I'm sure asking themselves, like, what we're doing here with our 6-7 grand chronographs. Easily, I don't see anything on it that keeps it from being an 8 grand watch or a 7 grand watch, but it just happens to be 14. It's the Daytona effect.
On this week's show, we have the battle royale between Rolex and Casio. Even more watches from Seiko, more reports on the red carpet with Panerai, and LVMH dominate the week's releases with Hublot, Tag Heuer, Bulgari and Zenith, and all with Jose for company. Enjoy the show!
Greetings and welcome to aBlogtoWatch Weekly. We have a full house this week. We have Ariel. Say hello, Ariel.
Hello, everyone.
We have David. Say hello, David.
Hey, everyone.
And we have special guest all the way from a ridiculously sunny eastern clime, unlike the -6 I'm currently suffering from in Scotland. We have Mr. Jose Pereztroika. How are you, Jose?
Hey, I'm good.
Go on, just tease us. What's the temperature there?
30 degrees and above.
That is your one and only appearance. From now on, I'm only speaking to people who are in climates colder than the one I'm currently sitting in.
You live in one of the cold parts of the world. What I find is that you seem to fetishize warm weather. Like, people in warm climates, we're not like, wow, it'd be so nice to be in the snow. It doesn't matter how hot it is. We're not like, but you guys, you're like imagining shorts on a beach, sunlight, fewer clouds. Like, there are warmer places. In fact, there are more and more warmer places. You don't need to suffer.
That's a very good point. Maybe it is something in the Scottish psyche which just likes to suffer and moan and say everyone else has got it better than us. Yeah, it's true though. We are quite obsessed with the weather in the UK and particularly everywhere it's up. Our theme for this week is brought to us by David. David, you have a Monday article, a fantastic grinding gears.
Thank you.
3 trends we hope to see less of, but probably will see more of in 2023. So 3 trends to summarise: a race to the bottom, a race to the archives, and a race to the top. So let's start you off with a race to the bottom. Whose bottom are you racing to?
Personally, nobody's.
Shakira, but that's later in the show.
Yeah, that would be a different show. But it's just a note on the ridiculousness of these high water resistance watches that we have addressed on previous aBlogtoWatch Weekly recordings. You know, that is it really a watch or a wristwatch if it's so big that it's unwearable? You know, most other great engineering feats work and are praised because the item itself maintains its original purpose. You know, like if you build a really fast plane, you can still fit people in it, or a really fast car, you can still register it on the road, you know, like a Bugatti or something like that. So if something stops being usable by 99.9% of humans, or basically everybody, it's just totally pointless. And it's not really a great engineering exercise, is it? It's shaped like a wristwatch, but it's technically not a water-resistant wristwatch because you cannot wear it on the wrist with any sort of dignity. So that's my first point.
And so we are seeing this obviously in the release that we covered last week of the Rolex. Is it actually called the Deeper Sea, or is that just what we're all calling it?
The Deeper Sea. It could be.
Jose, most ridiculous engineering feat in a watch you've ever seen?
The Panerai Crown Guard. I had to say that, right? You know, I mean, a Panerai looks like much more, like menacing than actually this new Rolex that can actually go to like 12,000 meters. But a modern Panerai with this amazing crown guard has actually only a water resistance of 100 meters, which is amazing in comparison.
I asked the man, I was like, isn't this supposed to be a dive watch? And they're like, no, we make those as well. I was like, I don't understand. Aren't they all supposed to be dive watches? Isn't their whole story supposed to create increased water resistance? And yet it actually increases it by nothing?
It's true. Actually, it doesn't.
It doesn't do
anything. If we look at the vintage pieces, it's like the 6152 one that received the crown guard on the side. And that watch came from Rolex already with a water resistance of 200 meters. And it remained 200 meters even though it was modified with the Panerai crown guard. So it didn't change anything. It's just a feature to protect the crown from hitting it against, you know, like ship hulls and stuff.
But is that not like typically Italian design,
I was
though?
just going to say, let's try it out. It's an interesting idea. Let's see how it goes.
It turns out it looks good, but it serves absolutely zero purpose whatsoever.
Maybe it'll do something someday.
I mean, you see right now, it's not like a patented feature of Panerai. It's basically a trademark. They trademarked this half moon shape on the side of the case. It also, like engraved on the crown guard that it's a trademark.
It's a weird hybrid patent. It's called trade dress.
Okay.
It's like somewhere between trademark and a patent. The reason it's like a patent is that there's sort of a construction and a shape related to it. The reason is a trademark is because it's not associated with functionality. It's associated with product origin. So the idea is when you see what this thing looks like, it's supposed to make you think some specific person made it, right? The shape communicates the origin. And they said, hey, when you see this thing out in the market, people assume us. And so when someone else makes it, they are trying to say, oh, wait a minute, is that a Panerai? No, it's not. Plus, a lot of our watches don't even have a name, a name of the brand on it, so people can only identify it from the shape. And so that's sort of the argument. But to do that, you have to really push it hard. You have to remind people, and Panerai has to, I think, sue people all day long. Audemars Piguet lost that with the octagonal bezel on the Royal Oak, which I think for a while they attempted to do that, but now that has been a genericized design element, so anyone can create an octagonal bezel watch. It can be identical to that on the Royal Oak, and there's nothing that Audemars Piguet can do.
Interesting.
And frankly, it turns out everyone now does do an octagonal
Well, the news has
bezel.
been, the news is out. There was
The news is out.
there was a case actually in Italy. I think it was D1 Milano actually, who I think it was them, actually had to go to court over this, and it actually turned. I think it was brought on by Audemars Piguet, I'm guessing, but it actually was a mistake legally speaking because the court determined that they could not protect this design element and that it did not mean that the watch was necessarily made by Audemars Piguet.
The Streisand effect at large. David, that was the race to the bottom. We then had one of our favourites, I'm sure Jose will have some commentary on this, the race to the archives, about just the extent to which watch companies continue to delve into the past to try and create the future. We'll play some audio just now from Leslie, who's at Leslie Wine Food on Instagram. The best thing about this audio clip is the invitation we all get to go to Dublin. Leslie is like a restaurant critic, so knows how to show us all a good time in Dublin, but doesn't really appreciate your take on vintage.
Leslie Williams here from Dublin, Ireland. Lads, you have me triggered. Vintage watches are fantastic. I don't understand the hate. I do not understand the hate. I have several vintage watches. They keep extremely good time. I've a Polratter I bought for about 380 euros. It costs about 200 euros to get it serviced. It keeps time to within a couple of seconds a day. Not wanting to talk about watches because they are old is a bit like an art critic not wanting to talk about the Renaissance or the pre-Raphaelites because, well, paint is better now and artists are trained better, so therefore we should ignore everything that was happening 20 years ago. My vintage watches will maintain their time as well as any of the other ones. I prefer the look of them. They cost hundreds rather than thousands often. My son will be able to fix them in 100 years' time if he wants to, because of the fact that they've got cogs and springs, not weird ceramic parts. Come to Dublin, we'll get the time graphers, and I'm telling you, I'll prove to you that all my vintage watches are keeping as good time as any of your modern ones.
Leslie's kind of like, why are you criticising vintage watches? Just because it's new paint and paint is better doesn't mean you don't like the Mona Lisa because it was done with old paint. But I'm not sure that's quite what you're getting at in terms of a race to the archives.
Not exactly. Well, actually, I go on to praise those brands that can strike a healthy balance between, reproducing or reviving some of their older designs as well as, creating new and exciting designs. I think Zenith is my favorite example at the moment, because if you look at them, they've really, I'm not sure if they started this trend, but back at the time when Jean-Frédéric Dufour was still the CEO and Zenith was all over the place with these modern designs, I think he was the one who started these Chronometer at the time, Air Primero Revival series, and they just said, we have all these amazing designs which were kind of exciting and also historically important, so let's just start doing them again. And then it went down this rabbit hole of like vintage, and everything was sort of a re-release. And then Beaver came into the picture with some of the integrated designs and whatever. And now I think with the Defy Extreme and with the Chronomasters, if you go to Zenit, you will find a watch for sure that is either a great vintage piece or a very cool, very exciting modern watch. And that's what I was getting at. It's difficult for me to find respect for those brands who really truly succumbed to this trend and said, oh, well, I guess, we made all these safe designs 50, 60 years ago, and we can just go to the archives and release all of those. So I'm not against this trend. I'm against it being the be-all and end-all of what a luxury brand does these days.
Now, Jose, you extensively cover some of the results of people being obsessed with vintage watches and some of the shenanigans, shall we say, that goes on. Do you want to just give us a very quick, don't want to dwell on it too much, but a very quick update on what's been happening with the Rolex Unicorn stuff that you've been running on your Instagram account and website at Periscope?
There was a lot of interest from podcasts who wanted to discuss this matter, but interestingly, not from the mainstream watch media. I mean, neither Hodinkee, who was somehow involved in this whole story, as they were basically the ones that presented the watch the first time in 2013, nor anybody else was interested in this story and picked it up. So it's...
Well, we don't editorialize about auctions. I mean, we just assume that it's a bunch of funny business, and if we see one of the cool watches, we'll write about it. But the fact that somebody somewhere is selling a watch, we don't understand why that's newsworthy.
Okay, good answer.
Just assume that there's a permanent banner at the top of the page that says, yeah, it's in an auction. It's probably a bit ropey.
We love talking about stories that you discuss and things like that, but any one given auction, I mean, there could be exceptions if there's some remarkable one-of-a-kind thing, but that's a very specialized area, and it requires expertise like you have, Jose, to properly say, this is something which has truly not been in the market and this is cool, or... you know what, I wouldn't take this so seriously. There's a bunch of Frankenstein elements here. Story doesn't really add up. If you like it, great, but I don't think these people have got the treasure that they say they have. And there's value to that. That's a totally different game than buying and selling new or used watches.
And where is the story up to now? You've not had anybody from presumably the auction houses or the manufacturer phone you up and set you right?
No, that's always something that people ask, whether I have received any cease and desist letters or whether I have been sued by a brand or by an auction house. And so far, nothing happened. I mean, everything is very quiet. I don't know if they are planning to send me some ninjas at some point, but so far, nothing happened.
And your defense against ninjas? We've just come out of the Christmas season. Is your house set up like Home Alone, ready to batter folk with irons and hot handles?
Of course, that's one thing. But then, of course, there are. I mean, on a more serious note, there are of course protocols in place that, in case that anything would happen, people I know that have nothing to do with watches, they would immediately. Put all my databases and all the files that I have, documented, everything that I have documented over the years, they would put that online. And as a side note,
as a fail-safe, it sounds like you might have Liam Neeson hiding in your cupboard somewhere. I have a unique set of skills.
Let's look about this more carefully. The industry could have that type of antagonistic relationship with Jose or people like him. Or what I think is they should shift their thinking and to say, okay, we have this very valuable, very accurate, and absolutely free system of checks on us where if we say something which is wrong, someone will let us know. If nobody says anything, we're just going to keep saying it. And it is offering feedback on how things look and how it sounds. I mean, these people are asking huge sums of money for these little machines that most people agree aren't worth that much. They should really do it by the book, be accurate, be historically, I guess you get responsible and take into consideration all the little details that a museum would care about because they're selling it as that type of thing. It needs to be treated seriously, and there needs to be dignity for the buyer as well as for the enthusiast out there. I mean, there's so much funny business in it. Is that I barely take it seriously. I don't even pay attention to it. It's like it just annoys me because it's like so much silliness. I mean, I love historical watches, but I don't believe any of them. once in a while they'll get it right, but they're just as often wrong. So like, I can't personally learn anything about watch history through an auction house because they're too self-serving. They're going to say what they want you to think in that moment about that watch, and they might say something opposite a week later. That for me is not an academic environment, and they try to be it. So Jose is acting as a free check on their work, and I think marketers should value and celebrate that and not be so frustrated. Just go with it.
Race to the top then, David, your final comment, which is just what's going to happen to the grey market in 2023.
Well, let's just say if you paid $45,000 for a steel Daytona, you're clenching right now probably, because that was not the wisest move. It is true that, there's a reason why certain brands put a certain price tag on their products. There's a reason why Rolex is not selling the Daytona for $45K. It's not a $45,000 watch. And if you participate in that, sure, you may want that watch. It may be your grail watch. But then again, you're not buying that to flip it. You will just own it for the rest of your life or however many years, and then it's fine. But for others, I feel like sometimes these things get a little blurred, the lines between whether a watch is good because it's a good watch or if it's good because other people want it too. And a lot of people just want it in because it was the hot thing, a hot item to own. And we like watches for what they are as watches, but other people, it's a meaningless thing. It's just another car, a yacht, a painting, or whatever. It's just happened to be a watch, and we happen to be part of it because obviously we are part of the watch industry as professionals and also as customers. And so we had to endure this whole thing where watches that we might have wanted doubled or tripled in price, but that just burst spectacularly now, and I think it's going to go further still. And at the same time, I also encourage everybody to have an open mind when it comes to choosing a watch of their liking, or just searching a little bit further, because if we look back at 2022, we can safely say that the watches of 2022 have been awesome. There were so many amazing watches across every price range that I'm just baffled why people would not look further and just stick to those 4, 5, 6 iconic watches that everybody is after, when there have been easily several dozens of amazing watches launched just in the past 12 months.
Jose, your favourite watch release of 2022?
My favorite release is probably something like the Bulgari Octo Finissimo Sejima.
The Sejima, the mirror finish one.
Yeah, I think that one looks.
I was just looking at a picture of that. Yeah.
Ariel doesn't do top 5 lists of anything, but the Sejima edition would have been in my top 5 of anything from 2023.
Why can't we just say there was a lot of cool watches, I was like, no, but narrow it down arbitrarily right now.
Got to make a list.
That's the watch that remained in my memory. I don't know. Right now, I cannot think of any other. I mean, maybe the super deep Rolex, but I mean that watch is just something. Maybe also because I'm interested in architecture and design anyway. But I think that watch is really something special that we haven't seen before, and it just remained in my mind. So.
Great stuff. Well, go and check out the article. There's a very active comment section there as well, so go and contribute your thoughts at aBlogtoWatch.com. Okay, we have some watches in the news this week, and one story that was actually, I think, brought to me by my wife before it appeared on any social media watch geek channels is this thinly veiled row that's been going on between Gerard Piqué, former footballer of note, and his ex-wife Shakira. Gerard Piqué and Shakira have obviously been divorced, and Shakira has now recorded a song which basically slags off the fact that his new girlfriend she considers to be a Casio, and she considers herself to have been a Rolex, and he has traded a Rolex in Shakira in for a Casio of his new girlfriend. And this has kind of set the watch geeks going because, somebody famous and good looking is talking about watches. But this has resulted in Casio doing a sponsorship deal with Gerard Piqué. So some guerrilla marketing at its best there. But the question I want answered is, are there any Casio watches you would rather have than a Rolex? Go on. What Casio would you prefer over a Rolex? Name me some Casios that are better than Rolexes.
First of all, that solid gold G-Shock is pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts. And, if you want a watch that will last literally your lifetime but have a crazy story around it and be handmade by, the top of the top in Japan, like those high-end G-Shocks are really, really cool. They'll basically last the rest of your life. They won't need to be serviced, nothing like that. Just keep them lit with sun. There's an argument that at some point you might need to replace the battery, but I don't even think they really charge for that. They just want you to wear those things. It's just something really cool that has as much, if not more, engineering in it than your highest end Rolex. So it's not really a choice of one or the other, but there aren't bad choices at the top end of Casio.
I will pick Rolex anytime. Basically, I don't think that's. I'd be lying if I said I didn't, but it is true that Casio makes epic watches. I own quite a few of them. I own the cheapest diamond set watch in the world, which is a Casio, and costs about $50 or $60. There's an article on aBlogtoWatch, a detailed review of that piece and just basic G-Shocks. And I've been aspiring to have one of these super high-end MRGs one of these days, especially the Gussun ones. Hopefully I will pull the trigger on one of those, but that has not yet happened. But if I were to have just one watch for the rest of my life, it would be a Rolex and not a Casio for sure.
Well, look, I think the Casio G-Shocks are really cool, and I love tool watches and military watches, that were used by Navy divers and stuff. I mean. And those were Rolex and, of course, the Panerai watches made by Rolex and others. But, in modern times, everybody switched to G-Shock. So there are very cool G-Shocks that you can buy for instance, from the French Marine Nationale that have military markings on the back. And they are really cool, and it's like Ariel says. I mean, you can put a new battery in, and you can have that forever, basically. But what I noticed with my own Casio is that they are not. Are they supposed to be super precise?
Well, the ones that are the most precise update themselves. So right now with Bluetooth, even their inexpensive watches costing as little as maybe $110 or $120, what it does is every little once in a while it just syncs with your phone. So the quartz movement is going to be off by about 15 seconds a month. That is just their quartz movement. And so the way they've gone around that is by just having the movement update. The three options for that is the radio signals from atomic clocks, if you're in the vicinity of one, which is not everywhere, and it's not that reliable unless you're really close to it. There's, of course, GPS, which is great, but you need to be outside and it uses a lot of power. Or the most efficient is to just talk to a nearby Bluetooth device and to pick up internet time. And so that's what they do now.
Interesting. Okay, but to answer the question, no, I would go for a Rolex, of course.
There's enough watches for everybody. I mean,
Exactly. 2 for 2. I would boss the gold G-Shock. I think the solid gold G-Shock is just the most baller move in terms of stealth wealth.
It's the modern president's watch.
Exactly. Joe Biden's left it in his garage somewhere. Ariel, have you handled that gold G-Shock?
Oh, yeah.
I imagine it just weighs like the most a watch has ever weighed.
No, I mean, it's heavy. I've held heavier things. I mean, it's just a heavy G-Shock because it's gold. It's machined very well. It has a great presence to it because, yes, you can do an emulation with sort of a coating, an IP coating over the steel that they do a lot to make it look like gold. It's really not a replacement for actual gold. Gold shines in a way, plays with the light in a way that just the coating doesn't. It's like the fact that it's digital doesn't bother you at all. You're like, this is super cool.
So I've just found the lyric. So the lyric is, I'm worth 222s. I suspect that's because Gerard's new girlfriend is 22 years old as opposed to the mid-50s Shakira, possibly? I'm not sure. I'm worth 222s. You traded a Ferrari for a Twingo. You traded a Rolex for a Casio. That's brutal lyrics, but there we go. I'm not entirely convinced that Shakira wrote those and knows what either a Twingo or a Casio is, but there we go.
Oh, by the way, Rick, they were not married. They were just, I think what happened is that that Shakira was still living with him while he was already, having this new girlfriend on the side. That's why she's like somehow involved in her hate song against him.
Yes, and let's not go too much into that, because unlike auction houses and others, these guys will sue us almost certainly if we get it wrong.
Have you guys seen? I saw this picture floating around. I'm not sure if it's actually out there, if it was real or not. But I saw this witty reply from Casio in a tweet. I'm not sure if that was real, but it said, something along the lines like, "Hey Shakira, we may not be Rolex, but at least we have loyal customers, or our customers are loyal to us," or something like that. So that was a brutal reply, and I'm trying to find it now.
Wasn't there another reply that said like, "The battery of our watches lasts longer than the relationship between Shakira and Piqué"?
That could also be it. It's hilarious.
Bit of last week's show this week. So, Ariel, you sent me a wee email earlier on from Seiko. This is the power design project returning, and it begs to ask the question, does this mean, further to last week's conversation, that there's now going to be even more Seiko watch releases?
No, that's the sad thing. You never get to buy these, or at least not really. Maybe some of them they've made. I'm not sure. Once in a while they have, I think. But they definitely don't make all of them, and not exactly the way that these concepts are. Like, these are cool concept watches.
Is this effectively a relaunch of a scheme they used to have, whereby they invited like designers, industrial designers, to come up with something new for watches?
I don't remember all the parameters, to be honest. But what it is they have designers. I don't know if they're students. My understanding is they're all in Japan, and they take, at least this year, they took certain classics and reinterpreted them. That's what Seiko seems to be doing now, which is actually very interesting. They're saying, hey, designers, can you take our classics and reinterpret them? 10 years ago, when they were doing this, it was come up with new stuff. So it sort of goes to David's statement about, running to the archives. It is very true to see this happening, and it's happening within their own design competition, where the own management actually doesn't want new stuff. They're like, can you help us regurgitate real good? And I think that that's very interesting. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. There are a couple of watches that came out. These are cool. These are nice things. They're not all revolutionary like they used to be, because, they were really trying to go, kind of crazy. Now they're a little bit more relaxed about it. But I think that this is it's great just to look at. So look at the watches. I love when a great industrial designer approaches the problem of making a wristwatch. Usually it never gets made. When it does, usually they have to hold back because they have all these ambitious ideas. Here, someone with relatively ambitious ideas could get Seiko to make it. What a dream that is, to be able to make a concept watch for a brand and then have them make a physical example. I mean, that is generous. And we see that in Japan, where there is a great generosity within some of these, these promotions that they do. I've never seen that in America or Europe. It's like, hey, someone design a car and we'll make it. That would be really cool, right? So I think it's interesting. I'd love to see more of it. I'd love to see other brands do things like this where they'll make people's concept watches. So I celebrate stuff like this.
Yeah, go and Google Power Design Project and Seiko and go and have a look at some of the archives.
I mean, just the name is super Japanese, right? Power Design Project. Like, it sounds cool, but it doesn't make any sense.
I'm expecting some cartoon characters with samurai swords or something.
Maybe in the past they've done it. It's not a new initiative. I do stand corrected. They have definitely produced some watches that have resulted from it, but I don't think it's the case that every watch made as part of these gets sold. In fact, most of them I don't think are.
There are some fantastic designs there that have obviously been done by some very talented designers, which it would be lovely to see the light of day. David and Jose, you've obviously both been around the watch world. You'll have seen stuff that was proposed that never came out. Is there any brand out there that you've seen something from that you wish they would do or wish they would bring back, to delve genuinely into the proper archives and bring something back with real value rather than going into the archives and bringing back something safe? I'm not suggesting we go back to Thierry Nataf Zenith days, but What is there something genuinely in the archive that should be brought back?
Well, I mean, my dream would be that Rolex would make a re-edition of the 1935 reference 2533, which was basically the very first Panerai watch, and that watch was a 9-karat gold. Oversized cushion case, like basically a pocket watch that was like turned 90 degrees, and they soldered wire locks to the side so that they could be worn on the wrist. So
super
I
cool.
mean, that would be just amazing if Rolex or Tudor, but yeah, it should be Rolex, if they would make a re-edition of that watch and once and for all show where Panerai watches originate from.
Is this just to boost the price of all those used Panerais you've got in a drawer somewhere?
I have only one modern Panerai here with me that basically I bought many years ago, cheap already, and it's just not worth selling it. So it's just somewhere in a drawer, as you said.
Well, I'm not sure if it's in an archive already, but a couple of years ago, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, I was doing a manufacturer visit of one of these oldest, most historic, most fanciest named manufacturers ever. And sometimes what happens in these places is you just lean over the shoulder of a watchmaker and you look at what they're doing and what they're up to. And they were working on what is potentially the most complicated wristwatch ever. But it is definitely the most complicated wristwatch of that brand in the modern era. And, of course, no pictures, no nothing. And I thought to myself, wow, this is going to be huge when it comes out. And also leans heavily on the inventions of the person who founded that brand. So I think, you guys are getting closer to the brand that I'm referring to. But I'm not going to say it. And so I've been looking forward to that watch. And where is that watch? And, it's been a number of years. And it looked rather close to completion, even by the standards of such a complicated watch. And so I'm really not sure where that's gone. Maybe we'll see something this year, or maybe it's in another drawer of a collector somewhere, and it will never see the light of day. But it was very exciting, and I look forward to it debuting sometime.
Coming to an auction house near you sometime soon.
Yeah, potentially.
the never before seen watch from...
Yeah. But at least on this time, it will actually be true and not a Franken watch.
We touched on Panerai last week and actually the week before, and we've already touched upon on the show, and we're going to do it again because Panerai have been sending out their press releases again, trying to surf on the back of famous people wearing their watches without appearing to actually pay them for wearing their watches. And this was, I don't even know who this guy is. So that's half of the problem. Troy Baker wearing a Panerai Luminor PAM 0674. Now, this is The Last of Us. Is this thing from a computer game that everyone's raving about?
Oh, I saw that. The game was good. It was a good original story. And then this is on HBO. Well done. So who was wearing the watch? And was it from Last of Us?
So this is Troy Baker, who is standing in front of the Last of Us logo. So I assume he must be in the show.
Oh, okay.
But the picture I've seen, he looks scared. Now, maybe that's because the show is scary, but he's kind of like holding this Panerai watch. It's just a really weird image. You need to go and search out Troy Baker.
That's just his look. If you see him in shows, that's the look he does.
He's just a scary looking dude, is he?
Yeah, he's one of those character actors that does that. So, some context here. These events have these like rooms that you go to borrow fancy clothing. Like this started with jewelry, where women would borrow jewelry for red carpets, and then it turned into watches. Sometimes these celebrities are gifted, at other times not. But the requirement is like, hey, take a picture. So someone like this was probably, gifted this watch or something like that. But Panerai has been doing a lot of this lately, of this sort of placement. Not new, a little bit of a new strategy for Panerai. Of course, But I mean, I wouldn't consider this like actually somebody choosing it. Yeah, maybe they chose that watch or something like that. But the whole goal is to get the picture. It's not to have us write about it. It's, hey, let's have a famous person who's popular right now be wearing our product. The context around it won't matter. What matters is, the picture. So I don't know all the details here, but obviously this has been part of Panerai's strategy, and it's one that is not unique at Richemont.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I'm a big Panerai fan. It's probably the watch I own that is the highest end watch I have. So
well,
I'm a
then
big
watch
Panerai
The
fan.
Last of Us, where there's a watch is part of the story. Did you know that? A watch is a major part of the story. Not a Panerai. Not a Panerai.
Is it in the TV show?
Well, from the game itself, that the lead character has wears a sentimental watch, and you see the watch a lot. It's not even a very pretty watch. That's the sad thing. It's like a military watch on a NATO strap. It's fine. It's just it's not. We wouldn't look at it and be like, oh, that's sexy. We'd be like, okay.
Well, I did hear that the other news show that's out that I was getting messages saying, oh, there's watch content in this show. Is this Disney? It doesn't sound like a very Disney show called The Chippendales, which is about the Chippendale dancers.
This is on Disney Plus? So you'll put up with male strippers for watch shots. Got it.
I think you're watching Disney Plus, Rick. I think that's
Disney Plus R. No, I'm not watching it at all.
Disney X.
I was told, but the apparently there's lots of Rolex content, and there's a Rolex that plays a key role in founding myth of the Chippendales, allegedly. I'm sure it's all hokum.
No, this is good. I mean, this means that watches are a really big part of pop culture. I mean, we're laughing about it. It's kind of cliche, but at least it's not an iPad.
But what is the story here? So Panerai made a press release that this guy was basically wearing a Panerai watch.
No, they go to a red carpet event. They place these watches on people's for picture purposes, and then they send a press release saying, hey, look, celebrities wearing our watches. I know it sounds simple because it is. That's all it is.
Cool. Well, go and check out both the film and the watch. Or not the film. Go and check out the TV show and
a good show.
The watch.
2023 marks 25 years of Urwerk, a brand from Baumgartner and Frey with the ambition to challenge horlogerie with new ideas and modern technologies, making art that tells time. The first watches that Urwerk released were the UR101 and UR102 in 1997, which both featured wandering hours. However, 6 years later in 2003, Urwerk presented the UR103, replacing the previous more traditional timepieces with a satellite-style version, which has become an iconic feature of the brand ever since. For more, search for Urwerk at aBlogtoWatch.com or follow at Urwerk Geneva on Instagram.
Let's review some actual watches. So the last week or so has been LVMH Watch Week in Singapore.
Yep.
And my first question on this is, Watches and Wonders isn't too far away. We've had an absolute shed load of releases and reviews on at blogtowatch.com from all the LVMH brands, so Bulgari, Hublot, Tag, and Zenith. Are they leaving something in the drawer for Watches and Wonders?
Yes.
Or is...
Yes.
And where else can they go? Because they've done, they've really spread the love amongst the four brands in Singapore.
They just released half. It was a very light offering.
You think so?
Oh, I know so.
And was this a new thing, LVMH Watch Week? Is this a new strategy, or does this happen every time in Singapore? Is it just back because of COVID?
Oh, they changed the city, but the concept is the same.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, there's different marketing in different parts of the world, but there's like car brands. They try to have these holidays or these times around the year, like it's Toyotathon, buy your Toyotas. That's what January is. It's sort of LVMH. It's like, it's buy your watch week. It's to retailers because what they're trying to do is capture as much of their money as possible before Watches and Wonders. So the retailers have limited budgets throughout the year, and there's always been this sort of race to the beginning. That's why SIHH for many years was in January. It was, let's get the retailers' dollars before they go to Basel World, a few months later in like March or April. It was literally to try to get as much retailer dollars as possible. So in this instance, they're kind of replicating that a little bit. They're like, oh, January is open. Let's do it not in Geneva where it's freezing, and places like Singapore where it's not. And
good strategy.
It gets them, some news visibility because they love the fact that, really no one else is releasing stuff in January. So in terms of trying to get available media attention as well as, in their mind, maximizing the retailer budgets, that's why they do it.
Okay, so favorite watches. I mean, there's just a load of watches released this week, loads of coverage on the website. I'm going to choose one or two of my favorites to talk about, and then if you wish to talk about them too, you can, or you can chip in with something you particularly liked. But I think my favorite release of the week, bizarrely, is actually from TAG, and it's the Aquaracer Professional Solargraph watch in titanium. Now, we talk a lot about titanium in this show, especially recently. I think this, for the money, $3,000 is the kind of watch you could just buy, own. It would be your only watch. It's a good brand. It's got the solar charging, so you're never really going to need to service it until something really goes horribly wrong. It's properly water resistant. It's titanium, so it's not going to scratch. You're not going to damage it. It's going to be light. The lume's great on it. It's got a date on it, which all watches should have, frankly. I think that this is the watch release from LVMH Watch Week. Tell me I'm wrong. Fight me.
You're not wrong.
That's going to be a short conversation then.
No, I mean, look, the biggest complaint that's going to get is like, how dare you tag Heuer charge this much money for an Eco Drive?
Yeah.
And that's actually not effective statement, because this is actually like an Eco Drive Plus. Yes, it's more or less made by the same people, but it's got like a beefier battery, a beefier solar panel. Like, it actually does it better. So it is actually over-engineered in that sense. It is a great tool watch. It will last an extraordinary long time. These are low production, so 3,000 isn't insanely high. It really isn't, but sort of the pundits could argue that it is. I think that Hublot had a nice selection, but we don't really see a shift in their strategy. It's sort of the same strategy of colors and materials. The re-release of the retro models was fine, but nothing amazing, because I don't know that market is huge. But it's nice to see those again, to be reminded, where the design came from. I think Zenith had maybe the least, what I would say, novel personality. They were nice watches, but it's hard to see a theme, just sort of all over the place. But we do know that most of these brands are saving their best stuff for Watches and Wonders. I think sort of the most talked about collector's piece was the sort of Tag Heuer Monza. I think it was over $13,000 for, a cool art watch that's very sporty, not really a tool watch, very cool. But that's a sort of side of Tag Heuer we don't really see very often, is where they get into those price points. And they have in the past, and they continue to do so from time to time today, but it's funny how polarizing those can be.
Ariel, can you explain to me how this movement works of the Tag Heuer?
Yeah, I mean, it's an Eco Drive in the sense that it's a solar powered. So there's a photovoltaic cell that exists under the dial. The light passes through it. It charges a battery, and the battery powers a quartz movement. So it's a very well made one, and like I said, compared to the Citizen ones, it just has beefier specs.
And so how long does the battery last once it's fully charged?
Months.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it gets a huge charge from like just a tiny amount of light, which is not true with the Eco Drive. The Eco Drive ones, because the dials are designed to actually hide the fact that light can enter, they use a complicated series of prisms. Not that much light actually reaches the photovoltaic cell. Enough does, but this really is sort of it's the over-engineered solar watch. It starts with what the Japanese did and sort of builds upon it. It's an interesting sort of hybrid. It's cool. I love stuff like that. I know that there's like, not everyone likes those collaboration stories, but I think it's freaking neat. And this is the second Solargraph they did. The first one was last year with that, was it carbon? Is that what it was? It was interesting.
Yeah, it was a carbon one.
Yeah, different kind of colors and things like that. It's great to see it come back. I think Tag Heuer is doing the right thing of making it sort of like one at a time, slightly different changes. Don't make it an overly produced watch. But, I'm so glad they continue to do this stuff. It would be so easy for them to just go super boring, just Carreras and Monacos and just the same thing. That they sort of throw this stuff in there, to me, makes me happy. And, it continues to keep our attention. We want to know, we're curious, what's TAG coming out with? And there's some brands we don't pay attention until someone says like, oh, by the way, did you hear so-and-so actually came out with something cool? And we're like, really? Like with TAG, we still want to know what they're going to come out with, and that's good.
And where's the advantage to Citizen Group in providing this tech?
Well,
to LVMH?
There's, it says that they're provided by Panerai, which is owned by Citizen. So this isn't technology that I believe was engineered by TAG Heuer, which is fine. That's normal.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's through Panerai, which again, I don't know that anyone really is set up in Switzerland for this. So I need to know a little bit more about the backstory. But that's my understanding, is that it's through Panerai, which itself is owned by Citizen. And Citizen, we know, is the master of this technology.
Yeah, but why would Citizen let one of their big competitors have access to this technology?
Oh, they love the idea because they get to sell the cheaper version, and then they get to benefit from providing the technology for the more expensive one. That's like their dream, that these Swiss watches have their movements. They love that idea. They want TAG Heuer for these to do well, so that TAG Heuer comes and buys these movements. As
opposed to trying to create something equivalent to TAG Heuer themselves via the Citizen.
But they have it. They have $7,000, $8,000 Eco Drives, the super accurate ones. Citizen has it, and they sell their niche. If anything, TAG Heuer selling a high-priced solar-powered watch legitimizes it and makes Citizen stuff more interesting, creates more of a market for it.
Fair enough. The TAG Heuer Monza, you've already mentioned it. I thought TAG probably had the best of the week. I don't know whether it's because they've got so much of the range that they can hold back the Monaco, the other stuff that will undoubtedly come out of Watches and Wonders. I really like the Monza and wonder to what extent it should be more front and centre than the Monaco, because I think it's just a much more wearable, a much more interesting case than just a lump of square that some driver allegedly wore in some film back in the day.
The Monaco looks great on pictures. It's such a great design, but the moment you put it on your wrist, it sits so high, it's so bulky, that it just loses. It has zero wrist appeal. It's a very appealing watch on pictures and when you're just holding it in your hand. But the moment you put it on, it's like, oh my god, what is this? By contrast, this Monza looks super wearable, and the previous Monzas, these modern ones, also were very comfortable and it just looked great on the wrist. And this is more out there, of course, in this case and with the open dial, but hey, it's something. Oh wow, it's 14 grand. Holy crap, I just saw that.
Yes, there's always the thing about the price. I don't think I've ever actually seen a Monza in a TAG Heuer boutique. This isn't like a relaunch?
It is. There's no other currently made Monza.
Is there none? I didn't realise that. I assumed that there were still some kicking about.
It's crazy.
So we can expect to see this is the first one, and we're going to start to see it in presumably stainless steel, etc.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that right away. I don't think they're going to go like that. But if there is demand, this is, if anything, coming out with this watch allows TAG Heuer to sample what the sentiment around the Monza is. If it gets a lukewarm reception, then they've made some, weird high-end watches. They don't even have to make the full production. If it gets a great reception, then maybe it's a signal that the Monza should come back.
I didn't realize it left, but rather than seeing rows and rows of Monacos in TAG boutiques and going, well, they're really nice, but you can't wear them.
I wanted to mention this last week when we were talking about the potential new silicium hairspring or silicon hairspring in the Omega Speedmaster. Because Speedmaster is like 6-7 grand, and this Monza is now 13. And I wanted to mention it last week that I think we will start seeing more brands aim at this Daytona price of a chronograph, and I think that's also what's happening here. And when these brands look at the market and and what they see is that people can't get enough of a 15 grand chronograph, and they are ready to spend double or triple, then that creates a vacuum, and they are I'm sure asking themselves like, what the hell are we doing here with our 6-7 grand chronographs? It's not that Omega doesn't make more expensive ones, they do, but they have a sort of an icon with the Speedmaster there from last week, and they have every reason to position it higher and make stratospherically higher margins by consequence. And same here. I think this watch could have easily, I don't see anything on it that keeps it from being an 8 grand watch or a 7 grand watch, but it just happens to be 14, and potentially that is the reason why it's the Daytona effect.
We have a couple of releases from Hublot, the Classic Fusion, which I'm sorely tempted to chat about, but because David is here and because Hublot released the Big Bang Unico Integrated Rainbow and Big Bang Unico Time-Only Rainbow watches, and we know that David is Mr. Rainbow.
Yes.
Then David, we're going to look at this watch. What do we think? Where does this sit in the pantheon of rainbow watches?
It's pretty high. I think this deserves all the praise such a fine watch can receive. I've seen a number of these over the years, and Hublot keeps making these, and I believe they are made in-house. And the quality of the setting and everything is always exemplary. So it's really an amazing exercise in terms of habillage, in terms of how you decorate a bracelet and a case and the bezel. And sure, it's all over the top or whatever. I think it's a fun thing to look at without any sort of other agenda or whatever else. It's just an over the top watch, and just how you guys like a solid gold G-Shock, this is that times 11 in my mind. And for that reason, I just happen to like these things.
Yeah, I just can't get away from the fact that you're spending $160,000 on a watch, and I know that it's virtually impossible to do, but there is technology that can do it. Bolts, for example, but they can't get the screw heads to line up. They can get the gems to fade from yellow to red to blue to green, but they can't get the 6 screw heads to line up on the same bezel, and that, I'm sorry, would just do my head in.
It's done like that on purpose. I'm not saying that it should make you feel fine. There's definitely people that fall into two camps: people that don't care at all, and you.
But that's me with most things, to be fair. It's people that don't care.
They're like saying, but we're trying to prove that these are real screws. And that's how real screws operate, if you know how real screws are. The other ones that Audemars Piguet does are not screws. They just have a line, they're not, it's just meant to look that way. They're bolts, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but they could just put bolt heads on that and screw it from the other side, surely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fairly simple mechanics. Put the screw on the other side.
Then I'll just remind you how stubborn the Swiss are.
Okay, that's fair enough. I'll accept that.
Let's not forget the Chopard Alpine Eagle that actually has what they say is screws, and they are lined up properly.
And that only cost him several $1 million of R&D.
Oh yeah.
Well, if you got it, you might as well spend it on something.
And of course, the screws like this, every watch is unique, right? Because every watch will have a different position.
Think about it. That's like its fingerprint. They don't need an NFT in there. Just take a picture of the unique alignment of the screw
Exactly.
I think it was A's trying to refer to a certain bit of investigative journalism he did.
You will always recognize the Hublot, which one is the one that you've seen in the picture.
So if you're going to auction this off saying that this Hublot is from 19-ump, then this picture can show that it was the press piece that was only in 2023. So don't you go trying it, Mr. Auction House. We have a Seiko release, and it wouldn't be fair to have a Seiko release and not play Guess the Price of the Seiko. So without cheating anyone, this is the Seiko debuting the Prospex 1965. So it's a vintage reinvention, modern reinterpretation, Save the Ocean, SLA 065 watch.
I have two questions. What's the movement and what's the case material?
Okay, it is steel.
Okay.
And it is
the 6 series movement.
Yeah, it's a reinterpretation of the 62 mass. I'm looking for the If only we could get who wrote this article. Ripley, gonna put the movement right at the top of the article to give us a hand.
8L35.
Oh, it's an 8. Ooh, that changes things.
I didn't know numbers go that high.
Okay, so first up then, guessing the price of this Seiko We'll give it to Jose. Give us a price. How much are Seiko trying to sell this watch for?
This watch, not knowing anything about this watch, I would say like...
Yeah.
So, Ariel, you were saying like even better the movement, but is it like a really good movement?
Listen, it only helps a little bit, I'm telling you. There's no way it's guessing. Just guess. Really.
I don't know. What is like a $5,000 watch?
It could be. It could be.
Could be.
But it also could be $800.
We'll review the price in a moment. So, Jose guesses $5,000. David, what are you guessing?
$2,000.
$2,000 from David. Ariel, it's an 8. It's an 8.
I know,
What are you
but
guessing?
maybe they no longer promoting that one. It's in the lower expensive models now. They're prone to doing things like that. I haven't been following along. Damn it! It's like following a sports team. You lose one season, you have no idea what's going on. We'll go close to what David said. I'm gonna say like 1,600.
Okay. It is in the middle. The price of this watch is $2,900.
Oh, it's higher than
US
$2,000.
dollars. It's higher.
I knew that 8
technically-
Series one was going to throw everything off.
So there we go. This week, Seiko are selling their watches for $2,900. It's quite a nice watch. It's entirely up to you as to whether you think it's worth $2,900.
Truly, with all my expertise, you have no idea.
So, Ripley, if in future you could put all the details at the top of the article, but if you could make sure the price is very much at the bottom of the article so that we can continue to play this game, because it's quite a good game. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to the show this week. We are nearly done. We have a little promotion to make, which is we have a superlative episode out, and it's actually me interviewing Ariel. And in that show, we exclusively reveal another use for a chronograph, which we will add to our list, which is showing off. Because if you listen to the show, you'll get to hear about little Ariel Adams running around in shorts in the playground, showing off the complications on his watch. So show off is also the something we're going to add.
That's the part you choose to discuss? Wow.
There's lots of other good stuff as well. I thought that was relevant to both shows.
Thank you. That was fun to do. That show.
It was good. It was good. So do check that out as we reverse the tables on Mr. Adams. Jose, thank you very much for joining us. Do tell us where we can find you on the internet.
Periscope.com or on Instagram handle Periscope or Pereztroika, which is my backup account just in case my main account is being disabled again by auction houses, watch brands, or whoever.
The Ninja Collective. Good stuff. Ariel, where can we find you on the internet?
You can read my articles on aBlogtoWatch.com and on Instagram, Ariel to watch.
And David, tell us about your underscore.
It is ABTW_David. That's what it is. Exactly.
Excellent. And you can find me at RickTikTok. So thank you all for listening. Tune in again next week. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.